Well, we're just about to begin. I must say that it's a good thing that we do have celebrations, get-togethers like this. This may be the first time that I've worn a tie in several weeks or perhaps months. Usually I'm quite an informal person at the best of times, but this is a good way for us to start modeling other behaviors from other times. We are all finding our way during these times of pandemic. It is 3 o'clock, so I am going to start. I know that we will be joined by other guests as we proceed through our event. Of course, those people will be welcome, and I'll continue to try to set the stage and the context for the Ronald O lecture that we are having this afternoon. My name is Stan Blade. I'm Dean of the Faculty of Agricultural, Life and Environmental Sciences here at the University of Alberta. Of course, the University of Alberta is here located, its main campus in Edmonton. And just to acknowledge that the University of Alberta does indeed acknowledge that we're located on Treaty 6 territory and respects the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all First Peoples of Canada, whose presence continues to enrich our vibrant community. Well, it's a great pleasure to have all of you with us, and certainly our speaker and panelists this afternoon. You'll learn more about them. You'll have the ability to interact by asking questions in the question box. I encourage you again to stay engaged in the chat as you wish as well. And we need to get on to the work at hand. There's so much interesting discussion that we will have. But as Dean, I just have to take a moment to say that our faculty, the university is doing well under these very strange circumstances that we found ourselves in for the past year. We continue to work hard around the kinds of things that we're doing this afternoon with respect to community engagement. We take our responsibilities very serious for sharing of knowledge in connecting to our communities, and this lecture and other activities that we have been doing are a manifestation of that. Again, our faculty our students have been amazing through this period of time. This year we have over 1,700 undergraduate students in our programs, just almost reaching 600 graduate students. And we acknowledge this has been a difficult time for many students. There's a great deal of stress and anxiety around the circumstances that we do find ourselves in. But students have also done just a superb job in this new environment of virtual training and teaching of our students. And I just want to acknowledge the great work that they've done along with my colleagues, faculty members and instructors throughout this process. And then just also to say around the research that we do, our faculty is quite remarkable. We connect and have the skills and expertise that ties together agriculture to food, to nutrition, to human health. We do that on a base of disciplinary expertise in soils and water and biodiversity. And that work has continued in a safe manner, certainly following all of the directions of the Chief Medical Officer of Health. I'm just so proud of all of the people in our faculty and how we have been able to have success over this time period. So now on to the Ronald O lecture. I certainly need to acknowledge Dr. Ball, and I think I've seen that Ruth has also checked in the chat box. Just to tell you a bit about Ron, again, we're very informal here, but I think it's important for you to understand. Professor Emeritus Ron Ball joined the University of Alberta in 1997 and built his career in creative and groundbreaking combined studies of animal models and human nutrition. His passion for teaching and mentoring distinguished Ron as a supervisor of over 50 graduate students, and he was a very sought-after supervisor. He has a passion for research, over 270 referee journal articles, 245 extension publications, with a significant amount of collaboration and community service. Ron has received a number of awards over the years, numerous teaching awards within our faculty. The Alberta Pork Congress provided Ron with a Lifetime Achievement Award. And on his behalf, the Banff Pork Seminar named the R.O. Ball Young Scientist Award to honor Ron's role as both mentor and leader in the industry, and for his role in building the Banff Pork Seminar itself to an important international knowledge transfer meeting for industry representatives and for producers from around the world. There are so many other awards and acknowledgements that Ron has received, but I think it's important for me to identify the actual contribution that Ron and the family have made with respect to this lecture. In fact, Ron continues to demonstrate his dedication to teaching through, after his retirement, both he and Ruth established an endowment fund to support the Ronald O. Ball Lectureship in Food and Agriculture. Ron's intention is to have the Faculty of Ayllu's host speakers who will speak on controversial and engaging topics to generate discussion and to ensure that guests have the chance to raise questions of our speakers and of ourselves as well. Ron's interest in debate and discussion are attributes that have made him so successful during his career. We are in a webinar platform, so I would usually, if we were in person, I would acknowledge Ron and have him give a wave. But I know that both he and Ruth are participating in this afternoon's lecture, and we're just so grateful for their support. Right. So to the event itself, as you have no doubt seen in the agenda, in a moment I'm going to ask Dr. Brenda Parle, who is the academic lead for the lecture this year, to introduce our main speaker. And then we have three superb panelists that will then speak not only to Alejandro's talk, but they will introduce themselves in a short period of time, in 5 or 6 minutes. And then we're going to open it up to questions and just overall discussion. I'll acknowledge them later, but certainly I want to acknowledge the participation of Dr. Miriam Wallet Abubakar, Chef Shane Chartrand, and also Casey Yellowbird, but we will hear more from them in the panel in a moment. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Brenda Parle. Brenda is a professor in the Department of Resource Economics and Environmental Sociology within our faculty. She has held the position of Canada Research Chair in Social Responses to Ecological Change between 2007 and 2017. She's been so involved in other activities, but I would just identify her as the principal investigator of the Shirk Partnership Grant around Tracking Change, a collaborative research initiative focused on the role of local and Indigenous knowledge in the sustainable governance of the Mackenzie River Basin, the Lower Amazon, and the Lower Mekong River Basins. So without further ado, Brenda, would you please introduce our speaker this afternoon?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Stan. Thank you to our panelists and all of those who are joining today. I'm joining you from Treaty 7 territory, south of Calgary, Blackfoot territory. It's a great honor to be able to connect with you on this platform. I think we've all become experts on Zoom recently, and even though we're not in the same physical space, I think the energy from the group and certainly the passion of our wonderful speakers today is going to really resonate. And so very grateful to friends Miriam Wali Abubakar, Alejandro Armendo, and also Shane and Casey Yellowbird for joining today. I will introduce first our friend Alejandro. Alejandro Armendo is a program director of Asociación Andes, a Cusco-based, Peru-based Indigenous Peoples organization that focuses its work on independent action research and analysis and fostering new forms of networking and alliance building. Alejandro is the founder of various international organizations and platforms cooperating with shared goals of protecting and nurturing biodiversity and promoting indigenous food systems, as well as focus on agroecology solutions. Alejandro is an agronomist by training with a background at McGill University, among others, and has served in various expert panels for the United Nations and other international organizations which is very relevant to your presentation today, Alejandro. So with that, I'm very grateful for your time, and please do go ahead with your presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone, all my relations. First of all, allow me to thank the organizers of this event, especially to Ronald O, Lectureship on Food and Agriculture of the University of Alberta, for this opportunity to celebrate Indigenous knowledge with you today. Let me also respectfully acknowledge the treaty and traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the traditional owners of the lands from where I am speaking today in Pittsburgh, Ontario. As a Quechua native from the southern mountains of Peru, I offer my gratitude to the First Peoples of Canada for their care for and teachings about Mother Earth. Allow me also to offer the blessings of my sacred mountains, the Apu Sangati, the Lord of the lands where I come from, who continues to provide nourishment for my people and all my kinship, animals, rain, lakes, rivers, springs, valleys. And I honor you, my Lord Ausangate, and thank you for being the keeper of this fantastic and beautiful creation. I also want to acknowledge the challenging times that we are living. The pandemic continues to strain individuals, families, and communities across the globe, especially our Indigenous brothers and sisters who already experienced poor access to healthcare, lack of access to essential services, sanitation, and other key preventive measures. We know that any external support will never match the magnitude of the size of the crisis, but are certain that only our own creative responses will finally match the nature of this emergency. In all this, I honor especially our elders who have left us but have entrusted with us with the responsibility of carrying on the ancient teachings about the value of Indigenous knowledge to build resilience, knowledge which is akin to the artistry of the weaver bird. Only the continuing crafting of solidarity and reciprocity will help us to create a resilience that will pull out of this unprecedented situation. Now, with your indulgency, please allow me to ask for a minute of silence to honor these lives and all Indigenous and non-Indigenous lives we have lost to this pandemic. Please allow me 1 minute of silence. In spite of it all, thank you. In spite of it all, I also acknowledge the arrival of spring and all the planting vibes that the season has brought to all regions of Canada. Back in Peru, my Indigenous communities are preparing for harvest. It's time for celebration. In all regions of the globe, Indigenous peoples' food rituals, chants, prayers, and blessings echo the heartbeat of Mother Earth. We all express these powerful feelings of gratitude and indebtedness to her, so she continues her journey weaving the annual seasonal changes that keep all our relations together. We thank also Mother Earth for the food she provides to us. Food has always been connected with us, with the living universe. It is the center of the resilience and adaptive capacity of Indigenous peoples, and it's attached to the principle of mutually beneficial nourishment with all our relations. Despite the chaotic environmental change and persisting inequities brought forth by colonialism and racism, Indigenous peoples collectively continue to maintain the longest ongoing human experiences with food provisioning, offering the world experiences and visions that respond to the challenges of health, nutrition, climate adaptation, conservation, equity, justice, and livelihood generation. Over the last 4 months, the webinars that the Amaranth Initiative have gifted us with inspirational indigenous initiatives across continents. And we have learned how these unique perspectives are key to further a just, resilient, and equitable global food system. I thank and acknowledge Brenda, Mariam, Tracy, Danica, Murai, and all the team leading this project at biodiversity conservation and health and well-being of indigenous peoples, for the superb work they have done, bringing together an amazing group of indigenous experts from all over the world to collaborate on this exciting biodiversity and health project. For me, the key message of these lectures is that biodiversity is central to human and planetary health. Our food systems interlink in a continuum, biodiversity to ecosystems to human health. This means that there is an intimate connection between the soil, agrobiodiversity, and the interrelations of cultivated and wild plants and animals. This is the type of agriculture and food systems that indigenous peoples practice, from Patagonia to Alaska, from the Pacific to the Amazon. In all these places, indigenous peoples' histories are intimately linked to food. We are peoples that trace our origin to crops. We are maize people, we are potato people, we are cassava people, and so on. Our connections are so old as our practices. For example, in 2010, about 140,000 burnt quinoa seeds were discovered in Brantford, Ontario, as archaeologists were conducting a routinary survey at a construction site. This quinoa are 3,000 years old and demonstrate that the quinoa hype or the white folks of these days are just an old tradition shared by indigenous peoples of Canada and the Andes. And while this biodiversity is being eroded globally in favor of a globalized industrial food system through monocultural seed uniformity and corporate power that promotes false technological solutions, and for many is responsible for the COVID-19 pandemic, as the Amaranth series have shown us, indigenous peoples can lead the way forward in building a food system that responds to the needs of human and planetary health. One that emerges organically from the bottom up and is defined by the thousands of years of lived experience of indigenous peoples who are the first farmers of the world. As an example of this, allow me to share with you the experience of the communities of the Potato Parque in Cusco, Peru, an association of 6 communities I closely work with, who are forging a concerted process of radical change through reestablishing an indigenous Quechua territoriality as a food neighborhood. But firstly, allow me to tell you about my ancestors. As many other native people of the continent were proud descendants of an ancient indigenous civilization. The communities of the Potato Parque are descendants of the Incas, who are recognized master builders and land planners, creators of an exceptionally sophisticated mountain agricultural system. The Incas built terrace farms on the mountainsides, and the crops were carefully chosen to thrive in the average temperatures for different altitudes and irrigated with sophisticated waterworks. The communities of the Potato Parque are continuing these practices, which we consider key to ensure the viability of agriculture in the future. The current health, climatic, food, and economic crisis we are facing, particularly in the global south, underscore the critical importance of indigenous models of agrobiodiversity conservation for responding to large crises such as the COVID-19 pandemic. In many regions of the world, especially in those recognized as centers of diversity, indigenous peoples and the small-scale farmers have been the least impacted by the pandemic. This highlights the fact that the health, food, and livelihoods strategies of communities in these areas are closely woven with the genetic diversity they conserve on the farms and landscapes and are effectively deployed to respond to this type of crisis. In places such as Peru, an important centers of domestication and diversity, in situ conservation strategies have allowed local indigenous farmers to build resilience through sustainably producing plenty of diverse, nutritious, and healthy food with little external inputs for centuries, helping to ensure local food security and livelihoods. The Potato Park in Cusco, Peru is an illustration of this. It conserves the largest in situ diversity of potato in the world. In the past, this crop saved Europe from famine, and today is the third most important food crop in the world. The Potato Park was established in early 2000 by 6 indigenous Quechua communities in the Sacred Valley of the Incas in Cusco, Peru, to celebrate its rich potato diversity. The over 5,000 inhabitants of the park occupy an area close to 10,000 hectares in a high mountain ecosystem that is considered a secondary center of domestication of potato. The lands are ancestrally owned and collectively held and managed by the communities as a single unit using a formal land association arrangement. Potato is a charismatic species that acts as a unifier of the communities and represent its most precious biocultural heritage. This focus on the potato as a cultural symbol has been key to the efforts to maintain the close to 1,400 potato varieties that the communities hold. The Potato Park Biocultural Heritage approach was modeled following the structure of Andean Ayllu. A traditional territorial arrangement representing 3 interconnected, mutually supportive spatial and temporal dimensions: people, nature, and the sacred. Achieving a sustainable balance between the needs and aspirations of these 3 universes is called summa causa, or holistic living, and it is the ultimate goal of the Ayllu system. Reciprocity is carried out between these 3 dimensions with food and seeds as a currency of exchange, and diversity of food sources, including crops, trees, and wild species, livestock, performing as the energy cementing the relationship. In the symbolic conception, human, natural, and supernatural universes communicate and influence themselves reciprocally, using food as a language of exchange. The Ayllu approach has also provided a framework for the creation of benefits associated to the conservation and livelihoods. These benefits have local and global dimensions and are captured from each one of the components of the Ayllu, the Saiha, Auki, and Runa, and the interactions. I will use this framework of the Ayllu now to briefly share with you examples of the key impacts that this type of arrangement has created and the holistic approach, highlighting the role of indigenous peoples' knowledge and practices in creating those benefits that address social, economic, cultural, and environmental concerns of the local population, while also generating important global benefits. The Saiha Ayllu, or the realm of conservation, includes all activities involving reciprocity and relationality with the natural world, especially caring for and nurturing domesticated and wild plants and animal biodiversity. In this area, some of the benefits include the Potato Park, for instance, has nurtured the highest potato diversity in the world. It maintains 1,347 locally identified varieties of native potato out of the more than 3,000 varieties found in the region. This rich collection comes in many types, shapes, colors, and textures. They are kept in the farmers' fields and landscapes, allowing for crop evolution to generate novel variations and maintain the capacity of these local varieties to adapt to changes. Also, the Potato Park has implemented a community-managed gene reserve for the 5 prominent potato wild relatives present in the Potato Park. These are key sources of natural resistance to local pests, diseases, and rapidly changing climatic conditions. And they represent a rich reservoir of novel traits and genes. The landscape approach to in situ conservation help to maintain important ecosystem functions such as water production, pollination, and nutrient cycling. Reciprocity-based nurturing activities between the Ayllu dimensions have helped to improve the quality of the soil and water, the ability to cope with different pests and pathogens, and ultimately the maintenance of crop genetic diversity in farmer fields. A dynamic in situ, ex situ collaboration model between the Potato Park and the International Potato Center includes cooperative action on conservation of the local collection, repatriation of materials held in the gene bank of the International Potato Center to the communities, participatory research on climate change, and various training activities. In recognition to the uniqueness of this approach, the national government has recognized the Potato Park as an agrobiodiversity zone, a new category that seeks to protect areas that harbor large genetic diversity expressed in the long history of co-evolution between indigenous peoples and native crops. Now, the Auki realm, which is the realm of the sacred. This dimension includes the customary laws and institutions and the collective governance system of the Potato Park. The information of the Association of Communities of the Potato Park as a governance institution has found a way to use customary laws. And this association is in charge of the administration of the park and the coordination and cooperation with governance sectors and local, national, and international partners. The governance of the Potato Park includes the mountain guardians as parties, especially on decisions related to matters concerning food, medicines, water, and the maintenance of norms and traditions associated to the principles of reciprocity, balance, and relationality. The participation of non-human actors in the governance of the Potato Park has enhanced the cultural identity and plus attachment, generating culturally bounded management mechanisms and instruments that promote the respect for nature and the strengthening of social ties to the use of crop diversity for rituals, festivals, gifts, building prestige, etc. Coordination and cooperation is also the generation of new knowledge and information through collaborative participatory research activities involving research institutions, gene banks, universities, which has created a space of knowledge exchange and co-learning among communities, as well as strategies for dialogue and conflict resolution. Customary laws have been the source of biocultural rights approach, which has helped to support policy development on biocultural landscapes, biocultural heritage indications, and collective trademarks. An intercommunity benefit sharing protocol, traditional knowledge database about local potato taxonomy, molecular information, and native crops, traditional knowledge and uses. Internationally, the Potato Park is one of the local communities that have included in its in situ collection in the multilateral system of the sea treaty and made a deposit to close to 1,000 accessions to the Svalbard Sea Vault in Norway, and as insurance against the uncertainties brought by climate change. Finally, all this experience has been systematized and used in the development and implementation of pluriversity on indigenous food systems and biocultural landscapes, which focuses on intercultural education, creation of new knowledge, and evidence based on building bridges among indigenous knowledge and science. Now the Runa Ayllu, the realm of the humans. This dimension includes all the productive and economic activities of the communities, as well as the management of biocultural assets considered domesticated, from plants to animals to water to rocks. And the potato had strengthened traditional indigenous agri-food systems, which have resulted in a more resilient production system that focuses on producing diverse, nutritious, and healthy food. In the last 15 years, the potato park communities have increased food production by better managing the prevention and eradication of pests, preserving and rebuilding traditional agricultural structures such as terraces and irrigation systems. A local seed bank conserving the local collection has been built with support of the benefit sharing fund of the international treaty, and is managed along with an emerging community seed enterprise that aims to provide highly quality potato seed to communities and farmers in the region. The key activities of the park has been the stimulation of economical regenerative activities to implementation of agrobiodiversity-based micro-enterprises, which includes potato-focused restaurant, which promotes local culinary traditions, marketing of potato-based natural products, including for health, personal care, and in implementing a vibrant agro-ecotourism program, among others. Development of new biocultural innovation has been also the focus of the new approach, including natural products based on agrobiodiversity and the integration of technological developments such as wireless technologies and solar energy to improve the efficiency of the traditional system. The use of collective trademarks and biocultural indications has helped to increase the marketing of local products and allow the recognition of the indigenous biocultural identity. Out-migration in the potato park is low. On the contrary, because of COVID-19, the number of urban dwellers returning to the communities in search of food, health, and livelihood has increased dramatically over the years. While I have focuses on the positive impact and experience, there is also problems, challenges, and conflicts as in any other community. Of great concern is climate change. Crops are moving fast upwards in the last 15 years, more than 100 or 200 meters like we see here. Also, agricultural and development policies are driving genetic erosion, including the introduction of modern crop varieties, promotion of mining activities, which force changes in land use and the destruction or fragmentation of habitats. In closing, allow me to highlight again that the biocultural heritage approach to in situ conservation of the potato park has been effective in catalyzing the great respect that Quechua people have for nature and its elements into an effective conservation and restoration model of genetic diversity of the potato. It shows how indigenous cosmologies can be used as paradigm of holistic sustainable development. The Potato Park illustrates how Quechua indigenous peoples have been empowered by the use of the Ayllu cosmology to craft an effective sustainable development and natural resource management strategy, which has institutionalized practices of respect to Mother Earth or relations through the use of customary norms in its governance and management approach. the potato park model demonstrates that indigenous peoples can improve the well-being, ecosystem, food, health, health security, etc., upholding the biocultural rights and achieving economical security while maintaining a reverence for and reciprocity with Mother Earth. This alternative model of development, where nature is respected and the rights and well-being of the community is held as paramount, demonstrates that indigenous cosmologies and spiritual values of respect for nature can inform policy in global contexts on critical development and conservation issues. The recognition and adoption of such indigenous development models is key to advance the incorporation of indigenous cosmology in global environmental and development policy making contexts, such as the FAO Treaty, CBD, UNFCCC, etc., as alternative paradigms to be institutionalized if environmental sustainability is to be secure while continuing to support economical goals through natural resource extraction. The approach is also having positive impacts on mitigation and alleviation of the effects of climate change, while at the same time minimizing the natural hazards such as flooding, droughts, or wildfires. It has also been fundamental in the community responses to the COVID-19 pandemic, the use of wild food plants, medicinal plants, which are important sources of local medicines and vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients. The model has also strengthened the role of communities as natural resources stewards. It's supporting biocultural rights and responsibilities, making the potato park an example of how the interconnectedness between nature and the local community generates a proactive and equitable approach to the management of agrobiodiversity and agricultural landscapes for future generations. Thank you very much.
Alejandro, thank you for such a beautiful talk. You've stimulated so much thinking and some questions are already coming through. As I've acknowledged, we will just take some of these very quick technical questions before we move on to the panelists. I very much appreciate your patience. And just because of the timing issue, I'm going to make a particular reference to a question that has come through from Lindsay. Alejandro, could you speak about the coevolution between the peoples, Quechua, people speaking Quechua in your region and plants? And can you give any background, any literature that talks about this coevolution? Certainly, I would assume between potato and indigenous peoples of the region.
In the potato park and indigenous Quechua communities or Maya communities, crops have their own communities. They are organized in a very particular way. Certain varieties have certain roles. So if you plant, say, a potato field, you have to consider the role of certain varieties as guardians of pests. You have to consider the gender role of certain varieties that have beautiful flowers and can bring pollinators. You have to consider the role of a ritualistic type of potatoes. So we consider potatoes as having a spirit. And most of our agricultural festivals deal with trying to connect with the spirit of the potato. There is quite a bit of literature on that, and I'll be very happy to send it to Brenda so she can distribute it to those that are interested.
That would be superb. I'm just going to try to get through the remaining 4 questions, and I really appreciate the input that people have already had. Timothy is asking, I believe in one of your frameworks, you talked about the engagement of non-human members. Timothy is asking, how do decision-making groups include non-human members?
We believe that the mountains are the wise beings in our communities. So as the oldest members of the communities, I will put as an example the Potato Park. They elect the mayor. They have to be a male and female, but also they have like as a head village lords, and also the counselors. So some mountains that play the role of protecting the water or pasture of medicinal plants. So mountains play a role in maintaining ensuring the food security, the health security of the communities. So they have to participate in decision making, and the way we do include them is through consultations that wise people that have that ability to communicate with the mountains through rituals and other means, like reading coca leaves, like doing special ceremonies at 3 in the morning. Those are the ones who are key in the governance of the community, so can transmit what the mountains think.
Very good. Henrico, you have asked a question which I am just going to defer to after the panelists speak. So I apologize, but I think it's an important one, but we will deal with it in a bit later. The last question in this section to you, Alejandro, is coming from Ruth Ball, from Ron Ball, actually, from Dr. Ball. Given the large number of potato varieties, is there ongoing work to make the potato even more available and easier to grow in other parts of the world? I'll just add on that we know that potato now is a very important food source far beyond its areas of origin. Is that improvement going on for those food insecure regions of the world?
We have, yes, certainly. We have shared potatoes with communities in Bhutan, especially with mountain communities in the mountains of Kenya, communities in China in the past, and are happy to share our communities. But I have to underline the fact that if you see a mountain, you can imagine a triangle. So potatoes are planted in the top of the mountain, so adapted to high altitude. And as we are in the southern hemisphere, they have to be readapted. And if you are in a plain, if you have a system that's more or a flat land, it's a totally different ecology, which kind of doesn't have parallel with a mountain where, diversity occurs because there's each variety is adapted to different altitude. So the ranges, you have potatoes in the lower part, and you have specialized potatoes that grow close to 5,000 meters.
Fascinating. Again, I'm just going to defer the remaining questions to the section following our panelists. I very much appreciate your understanding, and both great questions, which we will get to. Now we will move on to incorporate our panel participants. I've already introduced Dr. Mariam Abubakrineh. Mariam, would you mind just introducing yourself a little bit? And I know that you have some slides to share with us to set up our panel discussion. Dr. Abubakrineh, the floor is yours.
So thank you. This is a tough one to introduce myself, but first, and in very short time, but I would like to acknowledge the indigenous territory where I am calling from, the Algonquin and Anishinaabe, and the one where you are and where the University of Alberta is on, 36 and 7. So let me first thanks as they are in call and allowing this kind of event happening, Dr. Ronald O and his family, but also the Dean of Faculty of Agriculture and Life, Environmental Science, Dr. Stan, who is guiding us through this event, and Dr. Brenda Pali, my new colleague and virtual colleague that I get to know from the last month, and with her incredible and her skill of infatigability in working and research. So thank you very much. I have a lot of to say in thanking, and this is one of the ways that we express ourselves as indigenous peoples. But myself, I'm a Tuareg woman from the Sahel and Sahara region in Timbuktu, and I'm proud of the education that I got, the traditional education. And unfortunately, regarding all the issues that our planet and the Mother Earth are facing now, there is interruption on getting all the bigger picture and continuing to be to receive that education. And this is not only for me, but for millions of indigenous peoples. For a reason to another has to be cut from their traditional territory, including due to the loss of biodiversity. So today I will focus the time that I have on around this question and following Alessandro's great presentation on Runa Ayllu. So can we implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development without indigenous peoples? I do see in the sustainable development goals and in the how the spirit and the ambition of the agenda, which aim to be transformative and comparing to the Millennium Goals, and it focuses mainly on people, environment, and prosperity. But what does it mean for indigenous peoples, and how we indigenous peoples are seen in this agenda? So numbers, data are very important, and they are those used and tracked for the implementation and the review of how we are going within, or how we are implementing the agenda. These are some of the examples of how indigenous peoples are seen. Numbers 300 to 500 millions, which bring us to approximately 5 to 6% of world population. So very few portion, if we can see, we want to see the glass on this way, very few portion of the population. Is it meaningful? 15% of the world extreme poverty, so poor. Life expectancy also up to 20 years lower than the national average, so than the compatriot within the same country. But so if I can summarize these, it's vulnerabilities. That's how, when I read and I go through the agenda, or through the organizations and institutions who want to implement the agenda, we are seen as indigenous peoples. But even if we stay in this way to record or to track, I have an example from my own people for example, for the census, this census is not reflecting the real numbers of our population, not only because of the our way of life, like the Tuareg people are nomadic, the Maasai too, and the Pygmy in Africa are hunter-gatherers in forests. So one of the issues is the using the right ways to collect the data. For example, for the Tuareg people, when you come and ask the number of the household members, this is something that you don't have to ask never, because we have this concept of teshot that say that we can't say the member of your family, otherwise they will have something that will happen to them, an injury and a disease. So, and this is same also for the animals that we are living with, as we are herders and pastoralists. We have animals, and never we can tell you exactly the amount of heads, as we count them with heads of animals that we have. So just to make it shorter and very straight, it's very, very important to use a meaningful collection of data for indigenous peoples in terms of quantification, but also quality. And this brings me to the next, which are and related to the challenges for inclusion. So the challenges for inclusion and impacts, and I'm going from the one example from the Sustainable Development Goal 3.1, which is by 2030 reducing the global maternal mortality ratio to less than 70 per 100,000 live births. But is that meaningful for us? If we collect still nationally versus locally, these data, are they meaningful? Or even this ratio, is it meaningful to really get the pulse of how is mother's health in our communities? So this is the question that really bring us, and the issues that bring us to global pictures than specific to indigenous peoples, and the relevance of chosen metric, chosen global metrics and targets to indigenous people. Also, it raised the question of indigenous social environment determinant of health and well-being, as this is something that can, even among indigenous peoples, we don't have the same specific environmental determinant of health. When I'm considering a community at the front of a mining extraction area versus another community at the a very devastating forest, these two will be affected, and the stressors for them will be very different, and their health determinant will be different. And this image is from a work that I have been part of between UNFPA, the United Nations Fund for Population, UNICEF and UN Women, trying, it's a bigger picture that I adapted for the presentation, but it can see how broad can be the social determinant of indigenous women health, and also the birth children under 5 years birth, what can influence these data. And as I want to come back also to the first part here of on the ratio, and even here it can really change within the same country. And from this fact sheet that I requested to these 3 organizations, one of the things that came is within the same country, we can see that the average of, for example, percentage of women who did not receive any antenatal, and this is antenatal just, not even culturally sensitive antenatal care, it can be like 10 times less for indigenous women than their compatriot in countries like Namibia. But not only Namibia, we looked into 10 countries and always we saw the same conclusions. Now, what are listening to that, and also the concept that that my brother Alessandro shared with us of the community economic development. So it's clear that for indigenous peoples, we can't do nothing for them without them. And this is something that is a slogan that we really carry everywhere that we go, because of not missing the track and not really spending time in doing things that not working with and for our communities, but also wasting time in trying to get to development, which is not which is will face barriers and will not succeed. Now, coming back to we are also, as I was listening to Alejandro, it was clear that a holistic approach from indigenous people is something very, very important. We can't dissociate economic development to food security, to health and well-being, but also to environmental health. And I will finish with that. Sorry if I exceeded my time. Thank you for your patience. But also we do say, and this is what we were discussing, and I learned a lot from Aramat proposal, a proposal Alejandro also talked about, which is strengthening biodiversity through indigenous-led conservation and health and well-being. So we thought, and this morning that came out through our discussions on having like knowledge baskets as, okay, we say that there are things that there are, I said that there are opportunities within the 2030 agenda. They put people first. They are trying to mix 17 SDGs together and partnering. But what is missing is having ready tools and toolkit, and what we call in my language tamashak tagrik and tmusnawin, something ready that will work for our communities and that will be replicable from one another, and that can inspire people that want, and institutions that want really to change the way of working with indigenous peoples. And I look forward to come more in depth if we have time on all these. I really went very fast, but I understand that we have a limit time. And again, thank you very much for giving that time and opportunity to address you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bubakrine. You're correct. The time is always so short. and we do want to take the opportunity for our other panelists, and it gives me then great pleasure to introduce Casey Yellowbird. As you've seen, our faculty is very proud of our global connections, but we're also very proud of our local connections. Casey is from Musqueam, and in the same way, Casey, I'll ask you to introduce yourself and talk a bit about the work that you are doing with the Samson Cree Nation. You're very welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Casey Yellowbird. As mentioned, I'm from Samson Cree Nation in Musqueam, Alberta. I'll talk a little bit about the program that I run through my community. Is called the Community Freezer. It was actually a program that was started with a vision, and that vision happened about in 1995, just before my grandfather passed away. He had asked me to get to work on some sort of program, like start giving meat to the people. And because he had mentioned years ago that times are going to get really tough. And I believe that, and timing is everything. And I believe that we're all coming together in these times, in these interesting times of COVID. And I believe that he was talking about what the times right now. So what the Community Freezer does is we run it from September to February every year. And I say we because I work with a group of young men in my community who go hunting during these months to help service the low-income elders and our youth in our community. So what we do, like I would say, like for example, when we start in September, we try get elk, because that's when the elk are, in season and they start rutting, and that's when we start going to try harvest the elk. And then also the moose. In October, we start the moose start rutting, and that's when we start hunting the moose. November, it's the deer. But those are the three animals that we hunt most often, and those are the animals that that we work with in our Community Freezer. So what we do is we'll go out and we'll harvest, say, for example, maybe 2 moose at a time, bring them back. And then what we'll do, because I manage a youth center and I'm very connected with a lot of the youth in my community, we'll invite the youth in to partake in watching and learning about how this program works. And they're very hands-on. We don't allow youth to come hunting with us just yet, just because of safety policies, but we do allow them to take part in, helping us, package the meat and help and giving out to the people where they could learn how to share with our community members. And they begin to learn, who our community members are, because we have a larger community. Sometimes we don't even know who we are, like as community members. So, but it's an opportunity for us to give back also to our elders too, because it's not a lot of elders can get out and hunt, and it's really important for our elders to receive, a lot of this wild game, because a lot of our elders still rely on this wild meat. And when the program first originally started, it was a program to help with food security. And because prior to becoming manager of a youth center, I used to work in the health promotion program where through that program, we were able to dream up the Community Freezer. And the Community Freezer has really evolved into not just a food security, but also teaching. As I mentioned earlier, we do have youth that partake in this program, and they get to see and they get to learn, and they get, they're really hands-on. And I believe that, when you're dealing with wild animals, it's very spiritual and therapeutic. And a lot of our youth are, they're really excited when they're allowed to, partake in the meat cutting. And the program itself is evolving into where we're eventually going to be able to take a lot of our youth out, because I asked the youth just recently, would they support the program if we took it to that next level, and it was unanimous. The youth were very excited, and the program itself, and I forgot to mention, the program itself, it's a bottom-up approach, meaning I approach the grassroots people, and in my community, and ask them, would you support this program if we got this program going? and it's very, very well attended program. You know, for example, like I would like if like I mentioned that we shoot like about 2 moose a month, but those 2 moose will yield about 200 large freezer bags of wild meat, and that can be gone in like 15 minutes because we have so many people in our community who service and utilize this program. And just recently, within the last year and a half or so, we began to partner with the U of A and Brenda in the program on chronic wasting disease. And that's where the program itself is moving into the next phase. And I'm very thankful that for the people that I work with and for all the collaboration that I'm able to work with and the partners with the U of A. Thank you very much.
Casey, that was fantastic. Thank you very much. And I should have pointed out that the Samson Cree Nation is also award-winning with respect to the Choose Well program and around most significant change. So congratulations on that. I would just then encourage all of our guests this afternoon to continue to put questions into the Q&A. Because there was a residual of questions for Alejandro, I'm going to go through those. But Casey and Miriam, I will also try to incorporate you into the discussions. And I just need to also pass on the regrets of Chef Shane Chartrand that was on the agenda. He has been unable to join us, so I do apologize for that. But I look forward to the discussions and the questions that are coming. I'm going to shorten some of these so that we can get through as many as possible by the end of our session at 4:30. Alejandro, the question is to you. Who are the most important consumers of the products that come from the potato park, and are they exported? There are other questions here, but I will leave it at that one.
Yeah, that's a good question. The potato park has an approach of short value chains, so it prefers regional and more local market. As you know, the Cusco region, particularly as being the entry point for well-known national parks in the Amazon and Machu Picchu, has a lot of tourism, though with COVID that has come to a stop like everywhere else. Nonetheless, that influx of tourism is the main source of income. The Potato Park has a specialized restaurant managed as a cooperative, an association of women who works in developing more the culinary traditions. So they develop different dishes, they do festivals, and that has created, and increased the tourism. But also they make shampoos, soaps, chocolates, solar blockers, dental, the past, and so there's different types of products that they transform so that they can give added value to those products, because the potato by the kilo doesn't have much price in the market. And the Peru has went through also to an interesting, movement in terms of gastronomy. There's a lot of new restaurants, neo-Andean, lots of mixtures. So that also has created demand for specialized potatoes, particularly those of color potatoes, and the ones that have texture, special textures. And so, different niches for different types of, opportunities. But exporting, it's very, I think, viable, because potato has very short shelf life. And those type of potatoes, as you may know, there was an attempt to create these color potatoes in Switzerland because they are mountains. But because of the difference in the latitude, even though Migros, the big food chain there, had the license, they couldn't develop the potato in Bolivian potato there in Switzerland. So localized markets are our best bet.
Understood. Thank you very much. I'm going to put the next question that came through to both Casey and to Alejandro, and it's around whether others are adopting your model. So to Casey first, are there other groups that are adopting a similar sort of a freezer program? And there was a question that also came just asking how many people the freezer program feeds. So I guess there are two questions there. How many does it feed, but are others following your model, learning from your model? And then I'll ask the same thing for Alejandro and the potato park.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Well, the first, as I mentioned in the 5-minute presentation, we will service about per month approximately 300 community members because we give 1 bag per person. And to the next question, we do have many indigenous communities that are modeling the same community freezer. It may not be exact, but we do share information on how we got started. And I think, and I mentioned in the presentation, I always talk to a lot of indigenous communities about making sure that it's a community-based project and that you start from the ground up and that you get the, you get the support from your community members and most notably your grassroots people. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Casey. Same question to you around the potato park. Are others following the model or learning from you?
Yes, we are members of an international network of mountain indigenous peoples, the IMIP network. And those communities all are indigenous. They live around centers of crop diversity and origin. So we have kind of a similar type of conditions, and our goals are also similar. They have come to the potato park more than a couple of times, and through the pluridiversity on biocultural landscapes and food systems, we are upscaling, so to speak, or replicating those, but under the specific conditions of each one of those communities. So that from India to Ethiopia to Nepal and PNG. So there's quite a few other places.
Very good. The next question is a bit of a technical one. It is for you, Alejandro. I know one of our famous entomologists from Southern Alberta has asked this question, Hector. The question is around, diseases of potato and just wondering around just pest outbreaks in general, especially insects and others within the potato park, and how do you deal with these things when they do come up?
Yeah, that's also another really good question, because with climate change, what's happening is that all the crops are moving upwards. So farmers, like in the potato doesn't tubers at certain temperature, and now with the warming, they have to move it up and up. So it's almost, at the top of the mountain. We don't know where to go, and pests follow. So while pests from the lower belts are moving up, the pests that in the higher elevations are also moving and affecting all the types of species that live there. So the problem has multiplied. And what we do is what we, everybody knows this, but it's evolutionary plant breeding, which is a very old, a millenary practice of what farmers do is that they intercrop their cultivar know that the new offspring is going to have vigor, so that they start selecting these new varieties for problems of like light blight. It continues to be one of the biggest problems, especially with climate change and this upward movement. But what I have to underline here, there is a strong experimental practice always happening. Farmers are continuously practicing. That's why they keep this high diversity. If some diversities don't work, others would work. if in one specific niche crops will fail, they will survive and be plenty in another niche. So if you see this mosaic of different types of land use that happens in the mountain, it is not because people like diversity just because, you know, of the concept, but it is the most important type of approach that farmers have to continue having access to food and maintain those diversities. And in the process, of course, they do seed selection, and the most promising, those that have new traits, they are very easily recognized by the farmers because they will produce more, they will have cultural traits, and of course, with climate change, that type of traditional knowledge becomes very, very important.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask all three of you what is an unfair question. It comes from one of my colleagues who is asking exactly the right thing. Dr. Linda Gorham's asking about how should scientists, and I'll generalize it a little bit, how should scientists work with Indigenous communities? And again, I understand this could be a week-long answer, but I'm going to ask all three of you if you could have it one piece of advice to researchers in our faculty, but of course even beyond, in how to work with Indigenous communities. And Miriam, if I could start with you, just to give us some of your insights. I know how active you are in these collaborations, and then I'll move on both to Casey and to Alejandro.
Thank you very much for bringing me back here. So yeah, to make it very short, and as you said, this is what we were talking about for and thinking about for months now, and even decades for some of us. But if I can make it very short and highlight the key element here for how the conventional, I will say scientific, can work together with Indigenous knowledge holders and Indigenous communities. First of all, it's coming from a very respectful and ethical foundations, where our knowledges, as Alejandro just explain or introduce it as how long and how complex and how very complete is the Inca knowledge about potatoes, but other elements. So respecting that, going from an ethical space and really putting Indigenous peoples leaders like ahead of what we want to achieve with them, as I talk about the slogan of nothing for us without us. Thank you.
That is a superb summary. Thank you. Casey, any advice to the scientific community on how to work with Indigenous communities?
Well, I think this is a start here. You know, sharing knowledge and just understanding who we are as Indigenous people would be a really good start for the scientific community to work, you know, parallel in you know, trying to accomplish a lot of what we're trying to accomplish here in terms of, you know, food security, whether or chronic wasting disease. And I believe, you know, the collaboration that we have right now with the U of A is an indicator of, you know, that we're already got the ball rolling on this collaboration and working together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Alejandro. You, I'm sure, have so many insights after your experiences.
Yeah, this is a very difficult, but also I think doable question. And if I may, you know, I strongly believe that we, as scientists, must, as Mariam said, start with decolonizing research. And decolonizing research means looking at indigenous knowledge as it is. In the Americas, as I was mentioning, quinoa existed and was farmed here 3,000 years ago. Agriculture was practiced 8,000 years ago. The sophistication of these agricultural systems is continuously reproduced from Patagonia to Alaska, but very little is recognized. So I think we have to start recognizing that the epistemology and the ontology of these systems are different. And that type of recognition is going to take us to create a multiple evidence approach where different types of evidence can cross-fertilize and produce the type of information and knowledge that can serve to researchers from geneticists to astrophysicians, because that's, we always look at the stars and look deep into the soil in food to, how to create systems where we continue to respect the land, continue to respect Mother Earth, because the ethics that is missing in this moment is pretty much linked to it. So we need a new type of science that can take us out of this crisis and can create, a new society. I'm not talking about that we have to destroy cities and change everything. It's just a recognition and keep evolving together with respect to Mother Earth.
Well, I really thank all of you for those questions. And I know that we could have further dialogue, but the three of you have done such a wonderful summary. I think this is where we are going to close this off. It has been such a superb discussion. I am so grateful to all three of you for taking the time, for being with us. And this is the one thing where virtual platforms truly fall short, but I hope that people wherever you are will just do a small clap or an honor of some sort to all three of our presenters. You have just done a fantastic job. Of course, again, to thank Dr. Ron Ball and Ruth for your support of this lecture series. To all of you who have participated, I know that we were edging up to significant numbers during the lectures this afternoon. We really appreciate you joining us as well. Thank you to Dr. Brenda Parlee for pulling so much of this together and using her network, and to my colleagues, especially Rahana Bennett, for pulling all of this together. This has been a brilliant lecture. I have learned so much from our colleagues that have joined us and from your questions. I would just wish you all well in these times. I would also encourage you to stay safe. And thank you very much for joining us with this Faculty of Agricultural Life and Environmental Sciences activity. Thanks very much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you, Tanim.
Thanks to our speakers. Bravo.
Thank you.
Merci.
Thanks, Miriam. Thank you so much, Alejandro and Casey and Miriam. It was wonderful.
It was just brilliant. You people did a superb job. I'm just so grateful, and thank you, Brenda. I wish I could take everybody out for dinner, and maybe we could even enjoy from other cultures, given the things that happen within Canada, but that will have to be for another time. But thank you so much. To the question about the recording being available, yes, it will be. We'll have to do some processing of it, but yes, we will certainly post that on the faculty website after a few days. Thanks very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Take care.